Alright guys, now I'm going to teach you to make one of our ferrule focus mitts, which is a focus mitt that allows you to practice things like throat grabs and eye gouging. It's a very animate, functional focus mitt. So what you're going to need is some kind of foam. I'm just going to be using some children's jigsaw mat, an old piece of jigsaw mat like you'd put in a kid's playroom. You can also use things like pipe insulation, or even larger would be a pool noodle. You're going to need a small length of either rope, or in this case I'm using nylon webbing, which is fantastic. We're going to use that for the straps. Some duct tape. When purchasing duct tape, I always recommend don't buy the very thickest that you can buy, because it can be a little bit hard to sculpt and rip. You want something medium quality, so not the thinnest, because that when you rip it sometimes gets very thready and messy, but something moderate. Something to cut with. I'm going to have an X-Acto and a pair of scissors. You're going to need an old water bottle, a little bit of rag to stuff in that water bottle, and then the most important things you'll need are a medium-sized and small ball to make the head, and 2 plastic caps. These are going to be eye sockets. So in this case, these are just thin pipe terminations. You can also use ABS or PVC, which is a little bit more durable, a little bit heavier, adds weight to your helmet. If you have them, it's fine, but I recommend the lighter the better. All right, let's get started. So the first thing basically we're doing is we're going to be sticking the big and small ball together. Doesn't have to be beautiful, just want to make it relatively tight. Alright, now our water bottle is going to serve as a throat. So all I'm going to do is cut off the top third. And I'm going to stuff this with some rags to give it a little bit of weight and also a little bit of resistance. Just to keep that in place, I'm going to slap a little piece of duct tape on top. We're going to be covering everything in duct tape very shortly, so you don't need to belabor it and make it too beautiful right now. So, from your perspective, what I want you to imagine is that this is going to be the primary aspect of the skull, that's going to be the primary protrusion for the chin, and this is going to be the neck. I'm not too worried about little cavities like this being filled in. In fact, it's going to help with the sculptural elements later on. But now I have my basic structure of my throat, which is highly crushable, and a very durable, malleable face and chin. The next thing to do is to think about straps. Now for the straps, what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to make 2 rings of nylon webbing. I'm going to have one that's going to be running roughly through the base, and a second one that's going to run up near the top. So we can just cut off our section of nylon webbing. I suggest making it longer than you need. So in the case of the bottom one, I'm looking for something that's basically going to allow me to just slip in. I don't want this to be too loose. I want it to be about that size. So I'm going to overlap that, keep it in that position, and I like to tape it a few times. So now I see I have a durable strap, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the taped portions, and I'm usually going to slap that in. I like to put on the straps first, because then everything I do to the head is going to just add durability and strength to the strap hold. At this point, it suffices to just have placeholders. You will make them more than strong enough as you get going a little deeper into the work. For my second strap, I want something that's going to go more over the bulb of the head. So I'm going to need a slightly longer length that's going to basically run here. I'm going to want something that's comfortable, but again, fairly tight. So the ideal angle is somewhere up here on the corner, and I want something a little bit tight. If it's too loose, it's really not going to give you much advantage. I'm going to want something roughly here, so I see that it fits nice and tightly inside. I'm going to put some placeholders. And once I see that it's in a relatively good position, I'm going to look at solidifying these ties a little bit. So what I generally do is, near the termination, I do sort of a basket weave. And I'm basically going to do quite a few pieces going over from the top and then over from the bottom. So if you imagine on each side, I want to have that overlap. What that's going to do is it's going to minimize the amount the tape will rip from the natural strain of the strap, because they do tend to fatigue after a little bit of time, and it's natural that is a point of a lot of wear and tear and tension. And so even with just this little bit, you see now it's less likely to rip here at the connection. I tend to focus on the upper strap first. The bottom strap is going to have a lot of traffic around it, a lot of face modeling and other elements for the throat. So we're going to be putting a lot of tape there anyway. And by waiting until that sculptural aspect has been built up, we can kill two birds with one stone and save on some tape. Once you get to that point, just make sure your straps still offer enough room. That's a nice tightness at the top. It doesn't wiggle as much. Bigger at the bottom, and there will be a little bit of buildup here. So now we have the basics of our face. What I'd like to do now is put in my nose. Now, put in my eyes rather. When I put in the eyes, the first thing I usually do when I build it up is I'm going to take some jigsaw mat or some kind of foam and build a little spacer between them. And usually I'll make it a few layers high, just to more closely match the height of these. So 3 should do it. That's more than enough. I'm going to place that in between just as a space holder. Then I'm going to tape that together like a very flimsy pair of goggles. Now, if I was to put this on the face immediately, what would often happen is they're going to kind of curl back and they're going to kind of wing back out of alignment. So I'm just going to build up a little bit of cheek surface. What I'm looking to do basically is put a little bit of cheek so that when this sits on, it's going to be less likely to wing back like an insect, and it's going to stay more parallel because human eyes, of course, are on the same plane. If we don't do this step, sometimes I find that we found from experience the cups start to move around a little bit and they end up kind of bug-eyeing to the side. So just a little bit of extra padding here to start that sculptural build of the face, and then I let that sit on there. So you'll see that when it's resting, just gives you a little bit of a spacer. That's all I really want to see. And then I can start placing this. So make sure that nose area is kind of lined up with the chin for the center of the face. So now we're starting to get the profile of the face, where you see it happening there, the front. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to start building up. So the next thing I'm going to do is kind of fill in the jawline a little bit, almost a semi-oval, and I'm going to be sticking this on like a little beard underneath. So again, my basic shape now. I just want to build it up now, so I need to build out a little bit his upper lip area, and I need to build up the forehead area. So for the forehead, I have this little scrap. I'm basically going to take pieces, little semi-ovals, and just build it out. I'm just going to start building this up now. So the more symmetrical you keep your pieces, the more regular the face is going to look at the end. My biggest concern now is to really make sure that these edges on the eye sockets are not too exposed. So usually what I'll do is I'll just build up around them using the firmer jigsaw mat, and then I'll use something thinner like pipe insulation to give a little bit of extra padding. So I want to give a nice armature underneath using this. And these smaller pieces are much easier to manipulate. So now I already see the formation of the eye sockets. I have good comfort on hitting with the hands, and I'm still going to put quite a bit more here. I'm going to build out a little bit of a chin so I have something direct that I can hit, and then I want this lip area to be a bit recessed and my chin to be a bit pronounced. There will potentially be a good amount of impact here on the bottom of the chin, so you want to make sure that's comfortable. You have nice natural handles. And then I like to build out a little bit of a nose so I can get some up shots and down crunches on the nose. A few ways you can do it. I've played around with using pieces of plastic to make something a little crunchy. Ultimately, just something out of foam tends to do it. So I'm just going to take a few little pieces. If you're so inclined, guys, you can tape it much tighter at the top to give it a little bit of a recessed bridge, and then let it flare out a bit at the bottom so there's a bit of sponginess to hit, and this way you have a bit of a wedge shape going on. So now I have a good hittable nose on that. I have some good protrusion. I can fill in the lips with anything. Just for diversity, I'm going to start using now the pipe insulator. What's nice about the pipe insulator is that you can kind of just cut it in little rings, and then it's normally got a little glued groove here that allows you to just play with it. It's super good for filling in spots like this for the mouth. If I want to now start building up the sides, the same type of piece is excellent for building up with softer tissue, and it's going to be a bit nicer on the hands when you hit as well. Now ultimately it's going to depend on what you want. I just want a face-like structure. That's good enough for me. What I like about putting that extra padding on the eye as well is that I get in really deep into the eye well, and I get a nice multiple layer covering of duct tape. So should I want to do something more than just like a sponge ball, for example, if I want to replace it and do drills using grapes or small fruit, it's really washable, it's easy to clean out, which is excellent. But now once we've done that, we're going to look around, make sure that we haven't left any sort of major holes, everything's covered. You could choose to put a single layer of foam here on the throat, or even to build it out sculpturally if you wanted to work on specific things, but that's good enough for me now. I see that my hand still fits in there before proceeding, nice and tight on the top, good control, it's not wiggling around when I hit it, and it feels comfortable to my hand. And now the last step is going to be to include the eyes. What I'm going to use for the eyes is just a very simple sponge ball. You can get 2 or 3 of these for $1 at the dollar store. Any low-grade ball will do, but sponge or like a stress ball is fantastic. So generally you only need about 1/3. So what I'll do is I'll cut through this a little bit. So I'm excluding the happy face. You might choose to have it as a winky eye, it's up to you. But then I get 2/3. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert those, push them in a little bit, get them into place. Now these will stay well enough in place if left alone, but after much use we found that one ideal thing to do is to build some lids. You could simply put layers and layers of duct tape, half closing them, but sometimes they start to fray and get gummy. So usually what I do is I will build a lid by taking a small piece of duct tape that I then fold upon itself in half lengthwise like that. So that'll just give me a non-gummy exterior, and I'm going to build it up about 5 or 6 times. This is really where you start to get the emotion of it in there, so I'm going to make him a little mean, put it in place at an angle, give him some aggression, some attitude in keeping with all the other mannequins we have in here. All right, guys, and there you have it. A very simple way, very inexpensive. Cost-wise, we're looking at medium ball was $3, small ball was $1. Eye sockets were each $1 for each of the caps, so we're at about 5. The small ball, it's less than $1, but let's call it 6. You could buy jigsaws, but if you don't have old jigsaws, you can do this with one pool noodle and one pipe insulator. You're looking at about $3 or $4 there. We're at about 10 total. And then we have the nylon webbing, which you can buy by the foot or by the meter. So that might be a few extra bucks. All in all, guys, the most expensive thing is the duct tape. You might pay $3 to $5, $6 a roll. The whole thing can be done for 15 to 20 bucks. If you're making multiples, it's even cheaper because you can use a lot of the leftovers. You can have a single piece of jigsaw mat that can purpose all of them. But what's great about this helmet is it gives you really good hitting surface, upward angles. You have a little edge to catch on the nose, a little edge to catch on the chin, eye sockets that you can deeply go into. You have hard edges in the eye sockets that you can hook into. You can smash onto the side of the head however you wish, and you can hit into that throat, get into that jaw area. So it's just a very simple, practical way, and it's a nice variety from the basic focus mitt that helps you get into some target identification and make your attacks a little bit more feral.